This past January, we got the big dumps of rain that we usually get back in November and December. It was the deluge, the biblical rains, the Pineapple Express smackdown. All the seasonal creeks that usually start to run back in November, December, were now bursting at their banks after these January rains. And it got me thinking about all the ways we mark the seasons and weather here on Gabriola. I think most island people do that. You seem more aware, more exposed, more connected to the natural world. I read that in ancient times the Japanese divided their year into 24 periods based on classical Chinese sources. The natural world comes to life in the even more vividly named 72 subdivisions of the traditional Japanese calendar, the microclimates and the micro-seasons. Like here, for example, when the herring spawn, or the rufous hummingbirds finally return in spring, or when the lion's mane jellyfish start washing ashore in the late summer, or the arbutus tree bark starts splitting and shedding. All the farmers on Gabriola stay pretty attuned to the weather and the seasons, and one farmer in particular, Eric Boulton, is in fact Gabriola's official weatherman. He's now in his 53rd year of continuous record-keeping for the federal government's weather office. On this episode of Straight Outta Gabriola, I dropped by the Boulton Farm to have a coffee with Eric and his wife Sue, and we talked about the weather and Eric's weather keeping and farming and even a little politics. Basically, the holy trinity of farmer conversations all over the world. The sun was streaming onto the kitchen table. Sue had a pot of coffee on and set out some of her fresh-baked lava coffee cake with big chunks of chocolate just melted through. It's been known to start a small stampede to the table whenever she serves it. Hello, Sue. Well, that's giving me the hint. Get your shoes off.
Well, this is the mud room.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, yeah, isn't that true? You ought to have a mud room. There he is. Hey, Eric. Good to see you this morning, sir. How are you?
Well, I'm all right for an old man.
Yeah. Wow. How old are you?
92.
92. Still looking good. Got good genes.
I suppose. Whoever she is, I don't know who Jean is. I'll go and have a look at the view.
We picked the right day to come.
Boy, did I ever pick the right day.
But don't report us for having waterfront.
Yeah, right. That changes, I think, the taxes and everything,
Yeah,
too.
that view is worth more than the farm.
The farm started back in the 1940s with Eric's parents moving to the island from Alberta. Then Eric and his older brother, Nelder, followed. Here he explains, and also a little bit of the story of farming on Gabriola.
We came to help Mum look after Dad, and for 18 years we gave him his retirement. And so
Yeah.
the responsibility is no longer there, so we got married.
Yeah.
Both of us were late marriage. I was 38 and Elder was 40.
Wow.
But that's what you do.
Yeah.
Back in those days, in years past, many people on the island kept sheep because they fit well with the forage and the ease of keeping and so on.
Yeah.
And they were very marketable. There used to be a huge foreign population here who wanted lamb. Over time, as history of the island moves on, agriculture stopped at the end of the Second War. The First War, the boys came home and they developed the farms along with their parents or whatever. But the Second War, they wanted money, which the farms couldn't provide. They wanted something better. They wanted logging, they wanted fishing, they wanted what gave them financial income. And so agriculture became dead. Mm-hmm. And that's about the time that we came here in 1948.
Yeah.
Right after the war.
And trying to give Dad a place for retirement. And so we revived this place and expanded it many, many times to what it is now. Because the land said, it's good agricultural land, just develop me. And so Nelda and I did that for 18 years. I look back now, if we had not borrowed the money in 1964 to do some land clearing, this farm would not exist like it does today.
And what a farm. Looking out over the pasture to the seasonal wetland, nicknamed the swamp, as flocks of geese glide in, this roughly 400-acre working farm is the largest on Gabriola. Officially called Somerset Farm in honor of the English county where Eric's mum is from. Generations of islanders have been brought up on Boulton's local beef and their huge turkeys that have graced many a Christmas dinner table. Eric and Sue have both been fixtures of island life for all these years, active in charities and fundraisers and community groups, the Lions, the Island Singers, and building community in so many ways. A highlight of many community events in the past was a live auction with Eric donning a cowboy hat and cowboy boots as the auctioneer extraordinaire. Daughter Alexa is now running the operation of the farm, but that doesn't mean Sue and Eric are retired. How could they, really? This land has been their lives, and who's going to keep the weather, after all? We get to that in a few minutes, but first Eric tells me of a little political lobbying work he did on behalf of Gabriola and all Gulf Islands. He found the opportunity to do that when he was recently down to Duncan for a farm machinery trade show, and he bumped into BC's agricultural minister, Lana Popham.
I was chatting with her about an idea that I have that would help Gulf Island agriculture.
Oh, yeah?
And there's a thing out there for farmers called a farmer card. Mm-hmm. And you pay, I don't know, $60 now or something to get a farmer card. And it exempts PST appropriate items that they're just a tax. And the farmer can't afford to pay tax. He has to pay it on, all his taxes are paid out of the productivity of the farm.
Right.
It's been there forever. And I can remember in the Eaton's catalog, if you were a farmer and you bought a little motor, say for a rototiller or something, it was one price. But if you're a farmer, you got exempted tax because there's flexibility in the marketplace to charge whatever the costs are. Mm-hmm. But the farmer doesn't have that flexibility of saying this is the cost of my wheat or the cost of my cattle. They can't. It's beyond their control. It's the marketplace that tells them. And when we ship our chickens out, we have to pay the cost of shipping them out. That didn't used to be because it was up to the processor to pay FOB the farm. When the processing plant in Victoria closed down about 10 or 12 years ago, we had to pay the ferry fare to ship them to Vancouver. And that took $12,000 out of my pocket. Now, the people in the Fraser Valley didn't have anything taken out of there. So what I ran by Lana was, could we not use our ferry card,
Our farmer card
when we
for the ferry.
Right.
when we are shipping our agricultural products either in or out? Mm-hmm. She said, what a good idea. I actually inquired in 1952 if I could have a climate station, and I didn't follow it up till, 67. And I've been taking readings twice a day since that time and recording it and then sending it into the Department of
Environment now. It
the
is.
Environment. It may have started out as transport, but
Yeah, it changed. We didn't have environment
And I
that
do
long
it,
ago.
I do it out of curiosity, but I also want to know when it rains, did we get enough to affect the crops and the grass and that sort of thing? Because the value of this farm under the Agricultural Land Reserve is based on the production of grass. How do you turn that grass into monetary value to pay your bills? The climate stations, I think there's 2,400 in British Columbia. And in many cases, they have a pretty good idea what goes on. They know without me doing it roughly what the weather is. And they do it by triangulation, say from the top of Mount Benson. And you can see closer to Benson, you have the heavier rainfall and as it comes out. And we're about as dry on Gabriel as any place can be, because the rainfall starts to stop at Rock Creek, which is that stream that runs halfway between here and Elgee. That water collects, I guess, in the 707 Park. You know, if you look at Gabriel, you've got the highland going both ways from Brickyard Hill, and it comes down this way down to United Church and Gray's Farm, and then it goes from there up to the ferry and off and around a bit. That has a lot to do with our microclimate, because at the bottom of the Brickyard Hill you can have rain, at the top you'll have snow. Or at the bottom of the Brickyard Hill you'll have no rain, and at the top of the hill you'll have some rain. It also affects the temperature. So you get these microclimates where somebody say, oh, we got a quarter of an inch of rain. I said, that's nice, we didn't get any. We've come from the school where we've attended events and you come out and it's raining. And we say, we hope we get this at the farm. And of course, by the time we get to Rollo Hill or down to Elgee Farm, it's starting to slack off, and Rock Creek, there's nothing. We have a precipitation here of about 3 feet of water on average, which is more than adequate for farming. The problem is distribution. As I've told many people, our climate here is too wet in the winter and too dry in the summer. And when you get the variation in climate, you never know whether that half inch of rain is going to come when you want it, or if it's going to come at all. Sue and I have actually seen when it's raining on this side of the truck, but not on this side. It has to stop somewhere.
And there's a perfect example of a Gabriola microclimate. I walked with Eric out to the weather station to take the day's reading. Taking daily measurements has created a well-worn trail across the grass, now just starting to come into early spring growth. The station and rain gauge are installed in the yard of the main house, past a stately old weeping willow with a flowing drift of snowdrop flowers that are now just in bloom at its base. That willow is easily 3 feet in diameter now. It was a sapling when Eric first arrived on the farm. And just out in the pasture beyond, we wake up 5 or 6 dozing trumpeter swans as we walk towards the weather station and rain gauge.
Yeah. Out of the shadow.
Yeah.
There's the rain gauge. And this is an inch. 25.4. When it gets to there, it runs out into this cup.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't often get much measurement in the overflow cup.
Mm-hmm.
And this is Stevenson's screen put together by inmates. They're the same within Canada, and wherever you go in Canada, the temperature is taken 4 feet above the ground. This is the low, and this is the high. Even though we had frost on the ground, at 4 feet off the ground, it was 0. Obviously, with frost, it had to be at least a degree or half a degree of frost.
Right, yep. Below
And
0, yeah.
the severity of a frost would depend on whether it started at 8 o'clock at night or 5 o'clock in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems to be the low spot sort of in the morning.
Mm-hmm. And you keep your calendar and your flashlight
Yeah,
for the night.
There's my daily calendar, and that gets transferred into that blue book that I showed you and you have pictures of. And that happens every month. So
Caught right up.
for my high temperatures, which is this one, I record on the left. And my low temperatures, which is this one, I record on the right.
Mm-hmm.
Then any moisture that falls, I put it in the middle, along with the kind of day, whether it's sunny or cloudy or whatever it happens to be.
Right.
So there's the low.
Mm-hmm.
And this recording goes to here.
Right.
And it's partly sunny.
Mm-hmm.
And then these temperatures will be recorded.
Right, for later in the day, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then carried over to the next.
Yeah. So that's how we know we get 3 feet of rain, because if we average it, that seems to be an average, but there's years when we have 30 inches and there's years we have 40 inches.
Yeah.
And you add those two together and divide by 2, now you got your average.
We talked a bit about all those weather logs that Eric has kept over the years, and the big events, like the snowfall of 27 inches or nearly 70 centimeters that fell in one day in December 1968, and the cold snap that same month with lows in the deep minus 20 degrees Celsius. The almost 51 inches of annual rain we got in 1983, and the ways in which the weather fluctuations and the change of the seasons can be noticed in nature.
I cannot give you an overall picture of climate change through my weather records, because it doesn't seem to exist in rainfall. We've always had some very hot summers and dry, long before we ever talked about climate change. There are things that stand out. In 1952, wells didn't start to fill, and they were all catchment wells, until January the 4th. 1956, we had early shift in the forest in May. 1993, I think we had 5.5 inches of rain in August. 1958, we had oysters spanning all over the rocks where they don't traditionally go. Even up at Taylor Bay, there was oysters on the rocks.
No kidding. Yeah.
And that was due to the water temperatures and so on. So you learn a lot just by watching the events and having either a good memory or a bad memory and looking at your charts to see. You can't argue with what falls in my rain gauge or what the temperature is on my thermometer.
So long as some cow hasn't knocked it sideways.
That's been part of my life here for 50-odd years. It becomes more than just a job. It becomes something that's ingrained in you.
That's Eric the Weatherman. And as I was saying my goodbyes and thank yous to Sue and Eric for the great day, he reminded me of his motto: as long as I have a roof over my head, food in my belly, and a bed to sleep in, I'm living the good life. And always,
just keep on smiling.
thanks for listening. Bye for now.